Hey everyone, it's Terry with Terry's Tidbits, and this is the final presentation that you will have on the Sales Cloud Consultant Study Group, mostly because I forgot to download the final session, which was just a Q&A, which you can take the practice exams that I have out on terrystidbits.com. There's a menu there that will take you to the links for everything that you need related to the certification study groups that I've led. This particular presentation is on reporting snapshots, big data, and data management. So let's jump in and see what we can learn today. All right, well, very good. This is the last week of the Sales Cloud Consultant Study Group. I shouldn't say it's the last week of presentations. We still have one more week where we'll do Q&A and have some fun doing that piece of it. I've got a lot of homework to get ready for that for next week, so that'll be kind of fun. If you do have questions that you'd like me to include in the Q&A piece or in the quiz, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to include those. Otherwise, we are talking today about, we're finishing up the sales metrics, reports, and dashboards. So it's report snapshots. So Brandon, you've got that covered for us. And then we end up with data management, which is 8%, talking about data migration and big data. So Brandon, take it away.
All right, sounds good. Can you guys see my screen okay?
That's good.
Perfect. All right, so we've got report snapshots today, and it's a fairly short presentation because it's pretty straightforward, although there are a lot of considerations when looking at report snapshots. So we'll just dive right in. The first thing that I want to cover, and I'll cover it again at the end to make sure that we do a full recap, but the definition of a report snapshot is that it lets you report on historical data. That is a key phrase that you'll want to keep in mind here in just a couple minutes. But you can save it, you can do a report snapshot on tabular or summary reports, and basically what you can do then is you can take a snapshot in time of whatever it happens to be that you want that snapshot on. And so when I was doing the research, some of the things that were the most popular that companies use for report snapshot are like opportunity pipeline, cases, open opportunities, things like that, so that you can compare the history of the data across whatever time frame you would want to run that report on, whether it's weekly, monthly, and so on and so forth. Okay. It's really neat. You can kind of track the progress, but I will say that track the progress specifically, again, here for just a second. But they let you work with data, like with report data, very similar to how you work with other records in Salesforce. So they're really neat. Like the more I dug into them, the more exciting they really become. Just know that you can't do any like row level formulas on a report snapshot. So it really has to be like data that can be looked at just like from a snapshot or like a picture, basically. And you don't have to do a lot of behind the scenes analyzing on it. You kind of want it to be fairly straightforward, if that helps. We've got the available in just for the reference. Now I'm going to go back to when I said that I'm going to say historical data, and I also said that you can see the progress, because report snapshot is different than trending history. And I didn't necessarily realize that until I started doing some research. So just know that they are two different things when it comes to Salesforce. Even though you can see history with a report snapshot, it's not trending the way that Salesforce defines it. All right, so the how-to is pretty straightforward. To set it up, you just need your source report and then a target object. What I will tell you is I was going to do like a really fun demo on this and have like the video play. And then I didn't spend enough time really I didn't allow enough time, let me say it that way, to really plan out what my source report would be, what my target object would be, what the fields would be, because of the limitations and the tips and such. So for example, I was was creating it and I kept getting stuck on one error where your target object cannot be part of like a workflow or anything like that. So it kind of made the planning process a little bit more tricky than I expected. So I would just say if you're going to use a report snapshot, take time to lay all that out before you like just want to dive into the system to start playing with it. So you've got everything laid out, you know what you want to do, you go into the system and you just define your source report, your target object, and the fields. And then after you have all of that set up, which if you've done planning well in advance, this part's going to be really easy. In the system, Salesforce walks you through it literally step by step. I thought that was really helpful. And then you have to map it all out so that you just, what goes to what and all of that. We all are probably familiar with mapping at this point when it comes to Salesforce. So you just want to know that when you run you want this done correctly so that when the report runs, you don't get any errors and information is going to where you actually want it to go. So those are the first 3 steps for how to set up a report snapshot. Then you get to schedule this. And this is really when I figured out that the historical trending and a report snapshot were different. So with historical trending, I think you can do up to 5 points in history. And I'll have you verify that for me, Terry, when we're finished. But when you're running a report snapshot, you can run it daily, weekly, or monthly, and you can have it kind of go on and on and on because you're not identifying a trend. You're just taking different pictures of data at a specific point in time, and then you can compare them for progress and things like that. And then you just, manage them going forward like we all do. And then if you have trouble, then it's, just going back and fixing, like if it wasn't reporting what you expected, or if you wanted to change fields and things like that, you just want to be able to troubleshoot it. So this is the very straightforward part of like the how to on a report snapshot. So anybody have questions on that before I keep going?
So what was the difference there between the snapshot and the was it historical trending? Is that what you said?
Yeah, historical trending. The historical trending, you can choose up to like 5 dates over past, and then it tracks the trend. Yeah. They're like related but different. So I just kind of wanted to pull that out because I didn't want any verbiage to like trip us up. And then I was looking in on our study plan, and I don't know that historical trending is part of the Salesforce Sales Cloud Consultant exam, but I did want to touch on it because it threw me off just a little bit when I was doing research for this presentation.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So Brenda, I have a quick question before you move on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And only because I think I saw this somewhere. Are there limitations on how many snapshot reports you can have?
That I think is coming up.
Okay.
There are limits on the number of fields. I don't remember seeing exactly the number of limits of actual report snapshots that you can have, but let me review that when I look at the tips coming up.
Okay, thanks.
That is a really good question, though, and I might Google it during the next presentation.
I was looking here too to see if I could help with that.
Okay, thanks, Terry.
Because I think there is a limit. I don't remember what it is, though.
One of the really neat things that I did find is you can actually create dashboards from the source report too. So I thought that was kind of neat. And then you can do the list views on the target object if it's included on the custom object tab when you're looking in Salesforce. So that's after you've got it all set up in that. This is the screen that I just wanted in here just because it really, I was probably going down that path for about an hour before I figured out like, oh, this is really different. So historical trend reporting with report snapshot is different than historical data reporting. So just kind of be aware of that. And then I think I made an error yet. That is the end of my slide. I'm going to stop sharing just for bandwidth. Because one of the things that I wanted to go back to was I covered the how-to because that was pretty simple and that's what I could find on Salesforce. But it talks about determining the appropriate report snapshot solutions. So I just wanted to talk through like use cases and when it might be appropriate for a report snapshot. And that's when I was finding the pipeline to be able to manage it, or to be able to manage the progress or the development of a sales rep might be something a company would want to watch. How are their new sales reps doing over time through the progression of skill building, demographics, and then other scenarios as well. And Terry, I talked way faster than when I practiced that. Were you able to find the for sure limitations?
Let me share my screen. Helps if I push the share button after. So here's what I found. Let me make that big enough to see. This is just generally speaking reports and dashboard limits. So it does have snapshots per org. It's listed at 200 on the professional edition, but they don't list anything on the higher levels, which I thought was interesting. And then they called out reporting snapshot schedules per time period. So there is a limit on how frequently. I think those are, when you schedule those, I think, don't you get like a half hour or an hour window or something like that?
I think it's an hour. Yeah.
So it sounds like that's a bigger constraint, most likely, than the actual quantity of them per org. So that would limit you to no more than 24 every day, as far as a new snapshot.
Very cool. One thing I would say is when you go to the trailhead for the Sales Cloud certification, these pages, and Terry, I can take the screen share back from you again as soon as this loads. It's taking a second to load. Let me pull it up here quick. Sharing screen. So these pages are the links that I have in the notes on the slides that I've updated or uploaded into the Google Drive. And on each of these, the number of tips that go along with it. So if I was to click on this link here, and it talks about that, these tips get really detailed. And so I didn't include them in the PowerPoint because you really do want to spend some time with them. And that's when I figured out that a lot of this you want to plan out ahead of time, because it talks about the limitations. Where I got caught up mostly was on the target object. And so just really taking time to run through, the tips on this and the limitations and the considerations and all of that, I thought was interesting. So I didn't want to necessarily cover this in the PowerPoint, but really encourage you to go through and look at this one in detail, because I think it will also help with situations when you could recommend it versus knowing that it's not probably going to be what they're looking for specifically because of those limitations.
Very good. I found another resource that I thought might be interesting. And for these exams, I wouldn't study anything outside of the Salesforce specific domain. But, everybody's familiar with Salesforce, Ben, and I think he did a nice job here of kind of defining the difference. So we have the reporting snapshots where it's literally taking a snapshot at that point in time and adding it to another custom object. But I liked how the writer did the historical trend reporting. That the Salesforce trend reports are designed to glance back at historical field values on a given date, such as an as of date. I thought I'm still struggling, I guess, a little bit in my head to think, okay, what's the difference between what that means versus the snapshot that ran at a given date and history as well.
Yes,
it's still confusing to me, and I don't know if I have a cleaner way of explaining it, but to me that at least defined the trend reports pretty well.
There are 2 links I'll drop in the chat that kind of help me figure it out. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but it did help.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I can pull those up once they're there. If I can find where my chat window went.
I had to find mine too to be able to drop it in there. So the first one is talking about the historical data, and then the second one talks about the historical trend and the differences there.
So this is a tabular or summary report results, a custom object.
There was something about 5 dates you could go back to. I'm going to see if I can find that article as well.
And
if I'm causing more confusion that I'm helping clarify, please forgive me. I'm really sorry.
And if somebody has, if you've got a great way of defining
that
it.
Second article you just sent, you can select up to 5 date snapshots in that span to compare.
Where was that at? That was in the
historical trend, the other one.
The other one, okay.
Yep, and it's that.
There we go. Yep, in that first paragraph. To highlight, so historical trending highlights changes between 5 snapshot dates. Whereas just historical data, you can have run on a consistent timeline, like every week, every month from now until the end of time.
I'm puzzling inside my head a little bit as to what's the advantage of one over the other. If it has to be more than 5 snapshots or 5 old, then you would have to go to the snapshot. Is that? But in essence, aren't they both? They're both the same data. It feels like, but at least I'm not catching the wording difference between them yet.
I think it's the use between them. Like the use case would be different. If you're looking at something like short term versus if you want to be able to see something over time for a longer period of time.
Now, this is a pretty significant limitation here too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That actually kind of makes me wonder, is they aren't talking about the history tracking, are they here?
I didn't think so, because they didn't mention anything about like field history or field tracking, and then it talks about what you would use it for.
Interesting.
Yeah, to me, the use case for this historical trend reporting is pretty narrow because longer durations than days or weeks are not recommended. You only have a 3-month window. So the only thing I can imagine using it for is like, how did our forecast change from the beginning of quarter to the end? Whereas the reporting snapshot seems so much more flexible.
It does. And that retention side of it's kind of what made me question the field history tracking being so limited. But yeah, and I'm with you. That was Kelly, right? That was talking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the same thing. I'm thinking, well, the limitations of this seem pretty significant.
I also am wondering, and I would need to dig into it a little bit further, but I'm wondering if like the report snapshot literally is just the picture and it's up to the person to do any type of analyzing on it, Whereas
It
this
is.
would do a little bit for you, but in short bursts. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, on the reporting snapshot, it is for sure taking a picture of the data that's in that report that you're pushing over, and it's adding more records. So you would have to, with the reporting snapshot, be able to create your report and summarize it based off of a date, and otherwise you're going to see, or based off of some characteristic that is consistent across all of those records. Otherwise, it's just going to look like a bunch of duplicate data with different values for whatever your numeric piece is that you're trying to track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And other questions or thoughts on that, on either of those?
And like I said, I don't know if the exam will even touch on the historical trend reporting because I couldn't find it other than just finding it through here. But I didn't realize there was a difference, and I didn't want the verbiage to throw anybody off on the exam.
This is also a pretty significant limitation right there. That'll, assuming, and I have no reason to not say Salesforce spin isn't accurate because I'm sure it is. It's just not something we'd source off of an exam. But available for opportunity cases, forecasting items, and up to 3 custom objects. Those are some sizable limits. Not sizable in good, bad. they're not really good. Yeah, those are significant limits.
So,
okay, cool.
So I apologize for creating more confusion if I did, but it is really neat. It's definitely a use case, and seeing where a company could be able to use the report snapshot. Just make sure you have time to play it out, and then really look at the report to make sure it's capturing what you want for the purpose of why you've created it in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's what I have. Thanks, Terry.
And if we ever cause confusion, that just means you have to study more there.
And I will have to study more even after doing this.
Right. Yeah, I'd have to do a little digging on that one myself to be ready. I think the reports represented 7% of the overall score of our exam. So you'll probably see a couple of questions, I would think, on those topics. All right. So we have data migration. I did not see our presenter come in. So let's just kind of talk quickly. And then I see Julie's made it in for hers, and we'll wrap up with Julie at the end. So some best practices as far as migrating data. And I'm not a big fan of this idea of best practices because I think it's very situational as to what the best practice is. To me, in my mind, the best practice is do what's right for your org in your situation. But these are probably some decent guidelines to follow, and it is in Salesforce's domain. So identify the data that you want to migrate, and then what objects are you going to migrate those to? It says suggest creating a template for the data. I will frequently create a spreadsheet that's a mapping guide between the source system and then the Salesforce side. It's helpful from a documentation standpoint, but it's also helpful in identifying where you have some gaps in your data migration process. So that's really a good thing. The other thing that in my mind that the template helps you with is to realize where you have IDs that you're going to need to resolve. And again, some of that's just gaps in the data, but for example, you can't just plug in Julie Brandt as the owner of a record. It doesn't work like that. You've got to go resolve those IDs to find out Julie Brandt's user ID and plug that in instead. All simple things that we know, but there's times when you're doing migrations that you may not think about that in every scenario. So create templates for the data. Create an Excel template for each object using the data export from data loader. So you export file as your template. I did not know that was even an option. Has anybody ever done that? I'm curious. Using data loader, you can I suppose you could extract an object which gives you the field, the titles. I wonder if that's what they meant. Okay. Since every,
yeah, I think it just means like export all the fields and then don't manipulate the headers on those fields.
Oh, that's true. That would be helpful, I suppose, if you're using that as your template to put data into. That makes sense. Since objects have a mandatory relationship which dictates the order of migration, identify the required fields for each object. So that kind of goes back to what I was suggesting earlier, when you've got to, when you have to resolve all of the different IDs, you can't resolve an ID if that record doesn't already exist. So understanding the order in which you're going to need to load that data is certainly important. So here they give you an example there. You can't load opportunities without accounts being there. Populate your templates. The other thing I would say about this concept of what objects need to go in first, sometimes it's what records need to go in first as well. So if you're doing accounts and you've got a hierarchy of accounts, then you got to put those records in the right order. Otherwise, you can't establish, or you'll have to go back and establish your parent hierarchy once you've got your data loaded. So populate the templates, prepare the destination org, consider creating custom fields to store any legacy IDs. And if you're going to do that, oh, they've already got the answer. I was going to ask, how would you do that? External IDs is what you would use for that. And this is one that I've got a question I know in my system about this. What type of field support an external ID? Any thoughts? Wow. Text field is the only one that will support an external. It's got a checkbox on that particular field type that allows you to set it as an external ID. It's also a way of creating an index. If you're having some performance issues on a particular field, you can index that field by just making it an external ID as well. Right. And then that external ID is also available when you go to upsert your data into Salesforce. You can upsert using the external ID as the primary value versus the Salesforce ID. So that should all be helpful. Validate the data, making sure that obviously everything has gone in the way that you'd expected to. I like their suggestion here, and I've done this before as well, is create custom reports to validate that the data migrated in. So if you're uploading opportunity data and you have what last year's total opportunity amount was from the prior system, the system you're coming from, you can always compare that number to a new report that you've created on the Salesforce side just to verify, am I balanced with what I am expecting? Those are super helpful. You could do it off of record ownership. You could do it off of a variety of different things. It could just be simply record count. So the number of records the same. Spot check your data and review exception reports for things that failed. So that's any record that didn't make it into the system, looking at that and determining why. Some of the big things that I will run into when it comes to data migration is frequently it's dates that a previous system maybe didn't require dates to be month, day, year. And a lot of times they'll just have a year, or a lot of times they'll just have a month and a year. Those are all things that will not work in Salesforce when you go to migrate it. So you have to fix those values, either that or take them out, discard those particular fields. The The other one that I run into frequently is the email. Email has to be an actual email address, and frequently there's misspellings as you're migrating data from other systems. So that would be one that I think I would add to this, that I suppose it could maybe fit into the validate the data, but I would do that before I even uploaded the data into Salesforce. Make sure that the data that you've got is clean, or at least as clean as you can make it. If you do this a lot, you need to become pretty proficient in Excel, because there's a lot of Excel formulas that you can do that will simplify things, VLOOKUPs in order to get IDs resolved. There's just a ton of different formulas that I will leverage as I am cleaning up data, getting it prepped and ready to go into Salesforce. Is it safe to say that most of you have loaded data?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're kind of familiar, hopefully, with some of the pitfalls and things to kind of watch out for as you're loading data. Julia, you probably haven't loaded a whole lot of data, which is fine.
I'm way too scared to push the button.
Yeah.
And
no,
I've not mass emailed either. So keep me away from
right. Yeah. It's common sense stuff when you think about it. And as you hit the questions related to data migration, just kind of use some good common sense judgment on some of this. I don't think this section should be that difficult. They might snag you with something like external IDs, because it looked like I kind of got you guys all off on that one. Know that that's a text field. But other than that, I don't know that there's a whole lot of unusual things maybe to watch for. Know that it's an external ID as well for upserts. If you're having to do an upsert, know the difference between the where did I see that? Insert, updates, and deletes. Know the difference. Should you load it directly into production on your first run, or do you do that in a sandbox? That's kind of a common sense question. Where would you go? You'd go to a sandbox if you've got the space to load everything. That certainly would leverage what makes most sense there on some of those. And I think that's any other unique things, since we're trying to cover migrating data, that other issues that you've ran into or things that you think might be helpful for the group.
So I have one. It's been a while. This is Carolyn. I vaguely remember when I was migrating, when I wanted to get like the created date, I wanted to retain that.
Good
I had
call.
to do it as a system audit administrator.
Yes.
Like you had to change the profile.
Yeah. And what I do in that scenario is I just create a permission set, and that is what the fields are called. It's the audit fields. That's for your created date and modified, your last modified date. You do have the ability to insert those values, but you have to turn on that permission and give whoever the person loading the data permission to those fields. Yeah, good call out, Carol. That's fantastic. Any other uniquenesses or things that you've ran into? I don't think this will get into things like MuleSoft, although know that you can use external tools to do your loads. And if a customer has those kinds of tools and are proficient in them, I will almost always recommend that's what they do it. They know their data better than I do. And so if they've got the staff that can do that load, by all means, I let them do it. They know their data better than I do. They know all of that. They know their tools better than I do. So awesome. If nothing else on that topic, Julie, I'll let you kind of talk about big data.
Okay. Big data.
Big data. It's a big deal.
I know. I'm so not inappropriate, but I like big data, and I cannot lie. It's a song. Sorry, ever since I started working on this, it just in my head. So Not.
That's
just
awesome.
Ignore me. It is Monday.
I will not think about big data. Well, I'll think about big data differently now going forward. Yes.
Okay.
That's going to be in my head all day. Thanks, Julie.
I know. It has been in mine since I started this. Okay. What am I doing? Sorry. Monday. Sharing screen. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah, we see your PowerPoint.
Is that big enough, or do you want me to go into presentation mode? It's up to you guys.
I'm good. I'm in a big screen, but
does anyone want me to go into? I can make it bigger. You guys.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and make it bigger, Julie?
Oh my God. Okay, hold on.
Down in the lower right corner.
Oh, you just mean that? Okay, gotcha. Something like that.
No, the little icon right next to that slider you're on. That guy.
I just go up to the menu. It's a good thing I sell technology for a living.
Yep.
Okay.
I gotcha. Oh, no, we're on the wrong screen though. So up at the top where it says display settings.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you guys. Sorry.
It says show.
Over to your left about 3.5 inches and up a half inch.
Oh, I think
display settings.
The Zoom meeting might be in your way.
It is. Oh my gosh. Hang on.
There's a display settings, and I think inside there will be a swap display or something like that. And
there is.
Hang on. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Let's start over. Sorry. Hang on.
She likes big data.
She cannot lie.
She
might not like presenting on it though.
I don't have a poker face, so you probably see in my face right now. So, okay, I know what you guys are talking about, but I'm not.
Is it hiding? Yeah. Next one over, Julie. There's another more settings to the right of that show toolbar one. The display settings.
No, I'm not. I know what you're talking about, and it's not coming up.
Is something hiding it? Because we're seeing it just fine on this side.
Julie, do you have multiple? You must have multiple monitors going on.
Oh, I don't.
Okay.
Oh, you don't?
I don't. No.
So in the upper right-hand corner, do you see that like the X and then the two boxes? Click on the two boxes that are stacked.
Yeah.
Yep. And it'll make it so that you can slide it down a little bit. So like now, can you see the display settings? Is it below what was blocking it before?
No. You guys, I've done this a lot. Like, this is crazy that I'm not seeing what you guys are talking about.
You can go back to non-display mode, Julie, if it's easier. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I usually don't.
I was trying to make it big enough so that
you're
watching
fine.
YouTube would be able to see it.
Yeah, and usually that's so strange. I don't.
That's okay. I don't want to eat up all your time.
That's okay. Hang on. Because I did this before. You guys just do something else for a minute.
We could sing songs or something.
Yeah.
I don't dance though, so I can't do that for you.
What's going on?
Terry, I will tell you that I have my certification scheduled for June 2nd.
Very good.
And then I was feeling super ambitious. And so I also scheduled my business analyst certification.
Oh, nice.
For a week later. So we'll see how it goes.
Good.
Just do your trail mix and you'll be good for BA.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep doing it. So the 2nd and the 9th.
Awesome.
Or something. The 2nd and 9th.
All right.
2nd and 9th or something like that. Those 2 Fridays.
Awesome. I did manage to get all of our recordings uploaded. I just have to get them released on YouTube. So I've been crazy behind. I had some internet issues that was causing me troubles that I was able to finally get resolved, and because it was taking days to upload videos, which was insane. Julie, your screen looks beautiful now.
Good. Okay. And I saw it, so I don't know what was going on. So, okay. So I have quite a few slides here. The last 4 are going to be the most important because I took them from, Terry, is it Forge, where I signed up for a class and then I was able to go in and get
Focus on Force?
Focus on Force.
Yeah.
And so the last few slides.
Credit.
I will. The last few slides in this are like a scenario and then solution. So I think those will be really good for you guys to have. But what I usually do is I just start with kind of what we're told, what we kind of need to know, right, about big data, about data management. So this is what's taken about the exam. This is what we're supposed to know. And this is after kind of their course, kind of what you should be able to do. Not that you're going to go do their course, but it's kind of where I pulled my information. And I'm going to talk a high level. You guys are way smarter than I am as far as the nitty gritty. But, and this is where I got big in my mind. So, hello, big data, sounds impressive. What is it? So it gives a definition here. And it's kind of funny. I don't think about this a lot. Like Terry just does everything for me and makes all the data work. So I don't go to the level that you guys do. But the two things at the end, which was just interesting to me, was, it's everywhere and storage is cheap now and the processing is fast. And then the AI, uses machine learning to process records faster than any human could. I don't know why. That just jumped out to me as interesting and kind of the world we all live in today. So this is talking, I know, a big part of what they'll ask probably is, what are the impact on things when you have a lot of data, a large amount of data. So, you can think of performance, issues. I get asked that quite a bit. I just was on a scoping call that I had to jump to come to this call, and it was a very basic group, but they're, even talking about like Outlook integration. They're like, well, that impact the speed. So I don't get asked that too much anymore. So it is interesting when it comes up. And we had the Salesforce account executive on the line with us as well. But, 10 years ago, that was a big question. And I'm just going to run through here. So I've got really just more some resources for you guys, or just some things to kind of look at. I'm not going to try and explain a lot of this to you. This was a data flow that they had that I thought was interesting, talking about CSV files and import versus external data, data integration, and then all the types of data output that you can get from it once you have the data in. Big objects. Terry, that was new to me. Should I have known this? Like what a big object is?
Big objects is another type of, it's a specific type of Salesforce. Yeah.
Okay. Did we touch on that? I don't ever.
Because if you're dealing with this, you're talking like what it says there on your slide, 100 plus millions of records.
That's insane.
But
that was part of what I think they want us to know, I think. Yeah,
they are specifically designed for that. And when I think about like big objects, I'm thinking more in the area of system talking to system type things, where it's I've lost the term for what they call it. It's like a soda machine where it's reporting back to the distributor that says, hey, I'm about out of soda now, come fill it. Or I'm the jet engine that has a part that's about to go bad, and it's communicating back to
gotcha.
That
like machine
sort of machine, right? Machine to machine. Machine. Yeah. I forget exactly what that's called, but that's basically where I've ran into the need for stuff like this.
Okay. And I bet they won't ask us
dealing with it. That's a lot to deal with. So
Terry, we used them at my last org too, if you all want a story about that.
Say that again.
Oh, I was going to say we used them at my last org, but I think Brando was going to say something too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I was just going to ask a question because I'm super not techie. Terry, is the term you're looking for like API, or is that something different?
Nope, that's just a
little different.
Of communicating. Okay. Meredith, you've got my curiosity though. How did you use it?
Sure. Well, I didn't set it up. I'll just say that. But so in our industry, we had field service. So you think about within field service, you have work orders. And then within the work orders, you have work order line items.
Yep.
We had so many services. So due to that, we were running into limits. So we needed to use Big Object to archive those work order line items. And then the other use cases, we used cases. And so we archived some of our cases. Now with Big Object, you can set certain rules. So I only want to archive cases that are in closed status, that were created 3 years or more ago. And then with that archiving, we had a button, might have been a custom code button that we could recover that record if we wanted to be able to see it, kind of bring it back, but then it would archive again overnight. And I'm pretty sure that you can report on the records within Big Object, but I'd want to confirm that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, field service lightning, that makes sense from what I have dealt with that. So that definitely makes sense in my head.
There's a link I just put in your chat too that talks about when to use it.
Okay. Okay. And here,
oh, there you go.
So I've got use cases. I don't even know what I have here. Use cases of big objects and then considerations. So I don't think we need to go through this. I was trying to just get you guys some reference material as well. So I do have those in there. And there was a couple slides on considerations for using it. Like you just mentioned, Meredith, like the first one can be used to archive records that don't need to be accessed, by end users regularly. So it might be something that's old records over there. So this one is, I just wanted to grab because part of what we need to know is like, what are the different ways to integrate different options? So someone just mentioned APIs. So, there's APIs and other options down here that they talk about. Salesforce Connect, which we've touched on a little bit, I think I have over the years with customers. Salesforce to Salesforce. We're actually scoping a company right now. They're a transportation company, and one of their vendors, one of their customers wants to have the two connect. So we're working on that right now. And then data exchange. So these are just different. And you guys, I just don't let this mess you up here. I just put that up there. That's what we're going to be tested on. So I just keep repeating that. These are two types of integration techniques for integrating data between Salesforce organizations. And I don't know, Terry, if you want to touch on that or you think that's important.
I'm just reading.
Data virtualization and data management.
So I'm thinking what they're referring to with data visualization is that the data doesn't reside in Salesforce, it resides in another system. So you're creating a Lightning component or something that goes and retrieves the data to show it to you in real time, retrieve the data from a different system and display it inside of Salesforce. I suspect that's what they're referring to there. And then of course, data management, I'm not sure exactly what the REST API and SOAP APIs integration is going to be used to transfer. That's if you want to bring the data into Salesforce. Although arguably you can still use REST and SOAP on the other to do the visualization too. So that kind of throws me off a little bit. I think the difference that they're trying to make is, where does the data live? You can have it where it lives outside of Salesforce and you just show it inside of Salesforce, but you don't store it. Or the data management side, you're actually storing it in Salesforce.
Okay, perfect. I should just keep going, I guess. So here it describes them, the data virtualization there. And then this talks about Salesforce Connect.
Yeah, so Salesforce Connect is another way of getting external data into making it visible within Salesforce. It looks just like a custom object, except for the primary difference is it's going out and retrieving the data. It's a nice option if you need to run Salesforce reports against it. It has some really kind of cool features. So it's a good one to be aware of.
And then this slide talks more about that Salesforce to Salesforce. So that's what I'll be working with the customer on, the transportation company.
Right.
Which will be interesting. Have that meeting tomorrow. So again, and then just each of these follows up with like examples of using the method. So this, because I know in the test, they do a lot of scenarios, right? And then how do you solution it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go past that one. This is the end of mine, and I like this part the best because it it gives you the scenario and then it just gives you the solution. So items that I didn't get you guys information on or get us information on, you might want to look at these scenarios and then, study some of the areas if I didn't touch on those in the other slides. So I'm not going to run through these, but I think I have like 3 or 4 of them in here. Anyway, that's all I've got, Terry.
Okay. Very good.
Did I miss anything big based on, right here, analyze implications of large data sets? I didn't see a lot of that, like numbers and.
Yeah.
And I know you were going over some when I jumped on the call.
No, that's good. The trailhead talked about that I shared that link. I had some good information on the size. So, I mean, if you get a question on the exam that talks about 1 billion records, the answer is big data. I don't really care what the scenario is. It's big data. It's, things like that, if it's 1 million records, now you've got how many types of transactions are hitting that thing. You're getting into a little bit different of a grayer area as to when you would just use a regular Salesforce object versus going to big data. There's some differences in its use. You don't want to hit 1 million record table, 1,000 times every 10 seconds. You're going to get problems if you do. But that's where those big objects kind of come in handy. There's one other that is interesting that you probably have never heard talk about, and I don't think this will be on the exam. This is really more of an architectural issue, and that's called skinny tables. Skinny tables is one that is used to help improve performance on some of these objects that can be really large. There's a link in your chat on skinny tables. That's another technique that you can use. Salesforce can index fields for you if you need. If you're not familiar with what indexing does, it improves the performance of any kind of search criteria based off of a certain field. So if you're in a 1 million record table and you're always going to look at, say, a date field, and performance just isn't very good, you can always index that or ask Salesforce to index it. I think dates may automatically be indexed. I forget which ones they do and which ones they don't. I do know that external IDs are always indexed. Create dates indexed automatically. Record types are indexed automatically. The name field is always indexed. So there are a lot of fields that are automatically indexed, but if you've got something unique and you're hitting performance problems, always doesn't hurt to either make it an external ID if it's a text field, or give Salesforce a call and see if they can index it for you. Good. Any other questions on any of those? All right. Nice job, Julie. And again, that was Focus on Force. A lot of information from them. So if you're not familiar with Focus on Force, those of you watching the video, it's a fantastic organization. Feel free to go out and take a look at their material. It's very helpful information. So with that, that's my.
Yes. And Terry, I'll add that to the slide. Sorry, I'll put it on the.
No worries. Just want to make sure that they get credit for anything we're showing.